Preparing for a shareholder services interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 15 key questions you're likely to face. For each question, you'll see a sample answer, followed by the key points to cover. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. What does shareholder services do in an investment fund environment? Shareholder Services is the investor-facing operations function that supports subscriptions, redemptions, transfers, account maintenance, and investor reporting. I would describe it as the control point between investors, the fund, transfer agent, fund accounting, compliance, and client service. The team ensures investor records are accurate, transactions are processed on time, documentation is complete, and communications are clear. Strong service matters because errors directly affect cash movement, NAV allocations, and investor trust. While answering, focus on the function's purpose, its investor-facing nature, how it supports subscriptions, redemptions, and records, and why accuracy matters for NAV, cash movement, compliance, and client confidence. Question 2. Walk me through the life cycle of a subscription order. A subscription starts when the investor submits an application, AML documents, tax forms, and funding details. I would first check completeness, eligibility, cutoff timing, and whether cash has been received or is expected by settlement. Then, I validate bank details, investor classifications, and dealing terms before booking the trade in the register. Finally, confirmations are issued, records are updated, and fund accounting receives data for share issuance and NAV allocation. Make sure to cover document review, AML and tax checks, cash receipt, dealing cutoffs, trade booking, share issuance, confirmations, and the handoff to fund accounting or the client reporting team. Question 3. How would you process a redemption request and what controls would you apply? Redemptions protect liquidity as much as they serve investors. I would confirm the request is authorized, received before the dealing cutoff, and allowed under the fund documents. Then I check notice periods, lockups, gates, side letters, and any outstanding AML or bank verification issues. Once approved, the redemption is priced at the applicable NAV. Proceeds are calculated net of fees or penalties, and payment instructions are independently verified before release. In your answer, talk about authorization, notice periods, lockups, gates, redemption pricing, payment controls, and how the team balances investor service with protecting the fund's liquidity and governing documents. Question 4. What is the difference between shareholder services, transfer agency, and fund accounting? A transfer agent maintains the official shareholder register and processes investor activity for the fund. Fund accounting focuses on portfolio valuation, expense accruals, and NAV production, while the transfer agent focuses on who owns shares, how many, and under what terms. In practice, the two teams reconcile constantly. Subscriptions create shares, redemptions cancel shares, and income allocations must match investor holdings. Clean TA records are essential for accurate NAV dissemination and reporting. Be sure to mention legal ownership records, transaction processing, investor static data, and how transfer agency records must reconcile with fund accounting, custody, cash movements, and NAV production. Question 5. Why are AML and KYC checks important in shareholder services? AML and KYC are not box-ticking. They protect the fund from onboarding prohibited investors or processing suspicious money flows. I would verify identity, beneficial ownership, source of funds, tax residency, sanction screening, and risk rating before account activation. Higher-risk investors may need enhanced due diligence and ongoing monitoring. From an operations perspective, unresolved AML items can block subscriptions, redemptions, transfers, or distributions. So escalation and documentation discipline are critical. While answering, focus on investor identity, beneficial ownership, sanction screening, source of funds, risk ratings, enhanced due diligence, ongoing monitoring, and why unresolved AML items can block transactions. Question 6. What information is typically maintained on the shareholder register? The shareholder register is the legal record of investor ownership. It should capture investor name, account number, address, tax status, share class, holdings, transaction history, bank details, and restrictions such as lockups or special terms. If the register is wrong, confirmations, statements, distributions, regulatory reports, and NAV allocations can all be wrong. I treat changes to static data carefully, using authorization, maker-checker review, and audit trails to prevent fraud or errors. Make sure to cover what data the register contains, why it is the legal record of ownership, and the controls around static data changes, audit trails, and maker-checker review. Question 7. How does NAV impact subscriptions and redemptions? NAV turns investor activity into economic value. If an investor subscribes for $1 million at a $100 NAV per share, the fund issues 10,000 shares. For redemptions, the same logic determines proceeds based on shares held and the dealing NAV. Shareholder Services must use the correct valuation date, share class, cutoff, and equalization rules. Any NAV restatement may require revised confirmations, investor notices, and register adjustments with strong approval controls. In your answer, connect NAV to share issuance and redemption proceeds, valuation dates, share classes, equalization if relevant, and how NAV changes affect confirmations and investor records. Question 8. Why are dealing cutoff times important, and how would you handle a late order? Cutoffs exist to keep dealing fair across investors. If the prospectus says orders must be received by 4 p.m. before valuation day, I would timestamp every instruction and reject or defer late requests unless an approved exception exists. This prevents late trading, where investors use post-cutoff information to gain an unfair price. Operationally, I would maintain evidence of receipt, exception approvals, and clear communication with the investor or client team. Be sure to mention order receipt timestamps, dealing cutoffs, prospectus rules, exception approvals, late trading risk, fairness among investors, and evidence needed for audit or compliance review. Question 9. What are share classes and why do they matter operationally? Share classes let one fund offer different economic terms to different investor groups. They may vary by currency, management fee, distribution policy, minimum investment, hedging, or eligibility. In Shareholder Services, I would ensure the investor is booked into the correct class and that switches are authorized and priced properly. A wrong class can misstate fees, performance, statements, and regulatory reporting, so class mapping and static data controls matter a lot. While answering, focus on why share classes exist, common differences like fees, currency, and distributions, eligibility checks, switches, and the operational impact of booking an investor incorrectly. Question 10. How would you process a dividend or distribution to shareholders? Distributions require clean coordination between fund accounting, tax, custody, and the shareholder register. First, the fund confirms the record date, ex-date, payable date, rate, and eligible share classes. Then Shareholder Services identifies holders on the record date, calculates entitlements, applies withholding tax if relevant, and confirms payment or reinvestment elections. I would reconcile totals to the declared distribution and resolve rejected payments quickly. Accurate distributions protect investor confidence and tax reporting. Make sure to cover record date, ex-date, payable date, eligible holders, reinvestment elections, withholding tax, payment files, and reconciliation between declared distributions and shareholder-level entitlements. Question 11. How do you prioritize and respond to investor queries? I would triage investor queries by risk, deadline, and cash impact. A pending redemption payment or bank detail change needs faster handling than a routine statement request. My approach is to acknowledge receipt, verify authority, research the register and source documents, then respond clearly with evidence. If another team owns the answer, I still track it through to closure. Good service means speed plus control, not giving an unverified answer quickly. In your answer, talk about prioritization by cash impact and deadline, verifying authority, researching source records, clear communication, escalation, ownership through closure, and balancing speed with control. Question 12. What reconciliations are important in shareholder services? Daily reconciliation catches breaks before they become investor issues. I would compare the transfer agency register to cash receipts, bank statements, custody movements, and fund accounting trade records. Common breaks include missing wires, incorrect references, FX differences, duplicate bookings, and timing gaps around settlement. Each break needs an owner, aging status, and evidence of resolution. Reconciliations support NAV accuracy, audit readiness, and stronger client reporting. Be sure to mention comparing register activity to bank, custody, and fund accounting records, identifying timing or booking breaks, aging items, assigning owners, and documenting resolution evidence. Question 13. If you discovered a subscription was processed incorrectly, what would you do? If I found a subscription booked to the wrong investor or class, I would first assess impact: shares, cash, fees, statements, and NAV allocation. Then I would escalate to my supervisor and follow the error correction policy, including client approval where required. I would reverse and rebook with proper audit trail, notify affected teams, and confirm whether investor communication is needed. The key is transparency, root cause analysis, and preventing recurrence. While answering, focus on immediate impact assessment, escalation, error correction policy, reversals and rebooking, audit trail, client or investor communication, root cause analysis, and preventive controls. Question 14. What role do FATCA, CRS, and tax forms play in shareholder onboarding? Tax documentation determines how the fund reports investors and whether withholding applies. For onboarding, I would collect forms such as W-8, W-9, self-certifications, and supporting entity classifications. For FATCA and CRS, the focus is tax residency, controlling persons, GIIN status, and reportable accounts. Missing or inconsistent documents can delay dealing or trigger remediation. I would track expiries, changes in circumstance, and annual reporting requirements closely. Make sure to cover FATCA, W-8 or W-9 forms, tax residency, entity classification, controlling persons, reportable accounts, withholding risk, expiries, and change in circumstance monitoring requirements. Question 15. How would you handle a request to change an investor's bank details? Bank detail changes are high risk because they can lead directly to payment fraud. I would require an authorized instruction, independent callback using existing contact details, maker-checker review, and evidence retained in the record. I would not rely on email alone, especially before a redemption payment. After updating the register, I would notify relevant teams and monitor the first payment. Strong static data controls protect both the investor and the fund. In your answer, talk about payment fraud risk, authorized instructions, independent callbacks, maker-checker controls, using existing contact details, evidence retention, and heightened care before redemption payments. If you are still with us, congratulations, you are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.